From our 22 News Broadcast Center, this is 22 News in Focus.
Good Sunday afternoon. Welcome to 22 News in Focus. I'm Ashley Afonso. The opioid crisis has had a devastating effect on Western Massachusetts. And today we'll be speaking with representatives from Sheriff Nick Coche's office about the programs they've implemented to treat and prevent substance abuse. We'll also hear from a mother whose life has been changed forever by this crisis. And you'll get a chance to hear from people who themselves have suffered with addiction. But first, a word from Sheriff Nick Coche.
Thank you, Ashley. I'm Sheriff Nick Coche. The opioid crisis has had a devastating impact on our communities. Today's panel will discuss some of the creative ways we plan on addressing this important social issue. Hampden County really is no different than the rest of the state or the nation in its struggle with this crisis. A crisis which affects our sons and daughters, brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers, and so many families in our community. The loss of precious lives is tragic. The cost is staggering. The devastating consequences on families is unacceptable. When I'm in the community, people ask me, what is being done to curb this epidemic? I give you my word that my staff and team of trained specialists are working diligently to treat and educate those with substance use disorder. There is much more still to be done. We are working hard to provide these suffering individuals with the tools and directions they need to return to our communities as successful, productive, and law-abiding citizens. We need to do more work on prevention in our schools by teaching our children about the dangers of addiction and ways to avoid making the destructive decision to use addictive substances in the first place. We need to create solutions to provide access to treatment on demand, so when people raise their hands to say, I need help, they know where to go. Join me in this fight. Together, we make our communities healthier, safer, and more productive for all. I hope you find today's program not only informative, but also beneficial in addressing the needs of those who may be suffering or are afflicted with this debilitating disease. Thank you, and God bless.
Joining me now are several representatives from the Sheriff's Department and some other organizations they work with. We have Dr. Robert Roos, Vice President, Behavioral Health at Mercy Medical Center. We also have Michael Gaynor, Lead Counselor at the Western Massachusetts Recovery and Wellness Center. Yolanda Bowman, Program Manager for the Office of Community Corrections. Maureen Marat, Nurse at the Western Massachusetts Recovery and Wellness Center. And Sally Johnson Van Wright, Program Director at After Incarceration Support System. So first of all, can you each tell me a little bit about what you do and how you work with the Sheriff's Department in fighting this crisis? Sure.
And first, just thank you for having us here, and thank you to Sheriff Coche for being a leader in this effort addressing the opioid crisis here in our community. As the Vice President for Behavioral Health for Mercy Medical Center, we operate a range of programs that address substance use disorders at Providence Hospital that range from inpatient treatment to outpatient treatment and include medication treatment. And I'm thrilled to be here today with representatives from the Sheriff's Department because as addiction is a community disease and it's one that will only be treated through collaboration, I'm very pleased that we've been a partner with the Sheriff's Department for a number of years towards helping people receive treatment for this condition.
All right, how about yourself?
Well, I'm one of the treatment counselors at the Western Mass Recovery and Wellness Center, and our goal is to provide the education that people need in order to get the treatment resources they need, referrals to community agencies, halfway houses, that type of thing, throughout their incarceration process.
Yourself, Yolanda?
The Office of Community Corrections, it is a grant that is from Office of Community Correction for the Sheriff's Department to handle. And so what we do is work with probationers on the level 3 and level 4. It's really an intermediate sanction to keep people out of jail, as it is very costly to house someone in the facility. And we help them with every need from housing all the way down to any other programming that they need while they're under our care.
So our function in the medical department is basically to assist with stabilizing the residents while they're participating in our program down in Mill Street, and then providing some discharge planning, which can include some medication-assisted treatment, where we generally get them started before they leave, and then hook them up with the prescribing providers in the community, and also some risk reduction programs, such as our Narcan program, and we provide that for residents as well before their discharge.
Sally.
And I direct the team that reaches all the way across the whole continuum to look at reentry starting from the day that an individual becomes incarcerated, to address their treatment needs, their stabilization and so forth, and then get the kinds of support that are necessary once they come out into the community. And as well, we have a drop-in reentry center right on State Street in Springfield, and folks who have a history of incarceration from Hampden County can just come in, and we want to help connect them to services so that they can get their lives back on track. So in some way we deal most with the folks who are in custody, but really the ripple effect is all about families and communities.
Okay, for someone who might not be aware, let's talk about the severity of the opioid crisis here in Western Massachusetts.
Yeah, the opioid crisis and related conditions still remains the greatest public health challenge that we face. And this is something that impacts everybody, touches all communities, and remains the #1 cause of accidental death, both in the state of Massachusetts, as well as the #1 cause of preventable death throughout the entire country. So while we've seen some progress through a number of different tactics, really, focusing on prevention, intervening early, and providing treatment to individuals suffering with substance use disorders, and we've seen some decrease in the last year around the opiate overdose death rate, that is only one piece of a very complex and large puzzle that still remains, I think, the most challenging issue that we face as a community.
Okay, let's talk about some of the programs within the Sheriff's Department. For someone who might not be aware of anything that you guys all do day to day, can you explain those for us?
Oh, sure. Me or? Oh,
I'm so ahead. Sure.
I'm sorry. So there's several programs, and it's interesting because my career actually started behind the wall at the main institution as a substance abuse counselor, and then moving into the role that I am in now, we made it up close and personal because now it is community-based, and so you're looking at some of the challenges of the things that are not available, and we're trying to find different avenues of what is available. But for us, we collaborate strongly with one another, whether it's through the Mill Street, as we call it, or other programming that's out there. We even have BHN that works within our building. A lot of outreach services that's right there at the AISS Center.
Okay, can you tell me about the Mill Street facility?
Well, we're an educational facility. We offer 2 treatment components. The first one is a 7-week intensive drug and alcohol education component. And we also have a phase 2, which is a reentry and community-based restitution part for 30 days. And usually people are referred to our program from the courts, and it used to be called a Howard Street recommendation. So with that, we set them up with mental health resources and the medical part, the continuum for them to seek additional treatment. If they receive parole and they want to go to a long-term residential program. We also have family support services within our program that occurs monthly so that we can connect them with their family with resources to benefit all.
So these are all people who are incarcerated?
Correct.
Okay, what options are there right now for people who are not incarcerated but want help?
Yeah, and I think that there's a great need on both sides of that coin for treatment resources. So at Providence Hospital, we are the largest and one of the leading providers in addiction treatment, and so there are services that range the entire continuum as well, from inpatient or detox treatment to step-down services to outpatient, whether it's intensive or delivered through an opioid treatment program. And so, you know, whenever somebody's looking to access care, you want to make sure that they reach out to somebody that can do an evaluation, determine their needs, and then access treatment. One of the exciting things about the work that I think has been going on is that the Sheriff's Department has developed a very robust continuum of care addressing substance use disorders within their various levels of security and across their continuum that has interfaced and has integrated also with the continuum that exists outside and into the community. And so bridging those walls, bridging those connections is something that I think that holds great promise, and we've seen great rewards with as patients have access treatment and then continued their treatment in a setting like with our services.
How great of a need is there for more beds?
That is a constant challenge throughout the state. We look at the programs in this area who are filled to capacity, and when we have people who are just looking for somewhere to go, we have to reach as far out into Eastern Mass as we can, but we're finding that we're just lacking with the resources and the places for them to go.
Okay. We will continue our conversation on the Sheriff's Department's addiction recovery programs when we return. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Welcome back to 22 News in Focus. Today we're talking about the devastating effects of the opioid crisis on Western Massachusetts and the programs that are working to fight it. So now let's talk about when someone becomes incarcerated and now starts one of these programs. What does that look like? Walk us through that process.
Sure. So from the moment someone is booked into our care and custody, a couple of things happen. That person is assessed and stabilized, and quite often their family, we maybe even receive a phone call that's something like, now I can sleep well at night because I know that he's safe. I know that she's okay. So there's a process that affects the entire family. Every inmate that comes through our system does get mandatory programming, and then depending on their length of stay and their motivation and their needs, they're going to get a more intensified focus. I had mentioned reentry planning starting at day one. That's also something that's going to reach across the whole the whole continuum, and so people may move to any of 5 sites, but we're going to keep focus on that so that when they are moving back out into the community, they not only have changed, but they've got some new skills, they've got some new tools in their toolbox, and they're going to be able to rejoin their families and communities, hopefully functioning at a higher level. Does that answer your question?
Yes. For this to work, do they need to be ready to change themselves?
Well, they quite often aren't. Jail can be persuasive because it takes you away from a lot of the things that were distracting you. And I would say that our team, our staff, are really good at treating people with dignity and respect, and also gently assisting them to take a look at what was really going on in life. And so we do find that people end up resolving some of their ambivalence about change, getting a little bit clearer about what may have gotten in the way of their progress in life. And over time, I think we see a very inspiring level of focus. And I think we're going to see some folks today who have come a long way, and we as a staff are often deeply moved by the amount of progress that a person makes when they're in custody.
What have some of the programs with the Sheriff's Department done for Western Massachusetts?
So, I'll speak a little bit on behalf of sort of the connections that have been made between the various programs that the Sheriff's Department has had in Providence Hospital, which I've been able to see the rewards of in individuals day after day. So, for example, Providence Hospital Outpatient Department has clinicians that can provide mobile assessments. So go to an area like the pre-release center or to the day treatment program or into the after incarceration support systems location here in Springfield and do an assessment of what somebody's needs are, and then help construct a clinical treatment plan to move them into the right level of care for their needs. Once they complete their time with the Sheriff's Department, many people, dozens or hundreds actually each year, will transition into treatment that continues into the community, and we see the rewards of that easily in the stories that people that have continued in their recovery throughout time.
So would you say when someone completes the program that most times they are treated and you don't find them back in your custody?
Well, we see a lot of people who are very successful, and one of the things that I've noticed is that due to the relationships we establish once they enter the jail, that if anyone's struggling in the community, they're calling us. They're saying, I need some redirection. Is there somewhere that I can go? Can I come? Do you mind if I stop in and meet with you? And then we'll redirect them back to the process, because what they'll describe is that they stopped doing the things that they knew they needed to do, and they want to get reconnected again. So if there's a lapse in their treatment or their sobriety, those who reach back out, they find that we're there to welcome them back into the process, not necessarily being reincarcerated, but with a lot of the community-based programs that we have out there to support them.
And there's an incredible legacy, of the Hampden County Sheriff's Department in doing this sort of work by recognizing up front that when individuals come in contact with the system, that it is about rehabilitation, that it is about starting patients on that pathway towards recovery. That started with Sheriff Ash and has continued to Sheriff Coachy and all of the people that work within the department. And that has an incredible impact on the community when the Sheriff's Department really identifies itself as part of that social fabric that is working to address and solve problems that are impacting everybody.
Is this
I would add to that we recently have undertaken an initiative starting with the counselors and the supervisors to emphasize what we call a culture of recovery. And if from the moment someone becomes incarcerated and moves through our system, they are embracing and experiencing a culture of recovery, we do like to feel that our graduates and the folks who've been through our system are going out and helping Western Mass have a really vibrant culture of recovery as well, because it's not just about not committing crime and keeping communities safe, although we are very much in favor of those things. We want to have a vibrant community that's very active and supportive of each other, and we feel like we've got a lot of energy and vitality to support in that direction.
Would you say this is one of the biggest programs and biggest focuses of the Sheriff's Department, is working to fight opioid addiction within the people, with the people that are there?
Absolutely.
Compared to other?
It's a central issue, and it's a thread through our entire program. Whatever the drug of choice, we're going to take a look at that. We're going to look at behaviors. We're going to look at skills deficits. We're going to look at education. All those things have got to be addressed and sustained. Yeah.
If there was no cost to it and you could add beds today, how many beds would you add?
You know, to me as a treatment provider, we recognize that this is a long-term chronic disorder for patients. And beds are one piece of a continuum of care that is ultimately should be constructed to help people sustain their recovery and engage. So beds is one piece of it. I think in what we're thinking about focusing on now is ensuring that Western Massachusetts has the capacity and the capability to take care of its region and its community. And far too often we see patients have to leave the community to access beds, if you will, either via civil commitment like a Section 35 or sometimes in other cases, and that makes the reintegration into the community and the transition back to the home that much more challenging. And so if there was a way to develop capacity and treatment in a collaborative way to keep those resources here, I think it would better serve the community. And so without saying a specific number, I think it's really just kind of about how it constructs and fits into the rest of the system.
Okay, let's talk about somebody who has successfully completed treatment. What does the process now look like for them? Is this something lifelong? They're constantly involved in some type of program, or how long does that go on for?
Well, it's a lifelong process, you know, and this recovery process is about rebuilding and repairing the damage that occurred from this act of addiction. So for people who, once they get the initial problem out the way, they start to address their educational deficits. Many people get their high sets. They find out that they're employable, and their goals begin to change, you know, and we emphasize that. It's not just a focus on the substance that you use. It's the life that you want to build that you can be proud of. And if you're getting support all around, your family's been waiting for that opportunity to support you in those changes, they begin to buy into it and believe into it, and you'll hear from some of the other speakers, you know, how that has impacted and changed their lives.
How do you help someone who may not necessarily want the help?
That's always a challenge, to try to help somebody who like Sally said, is very ambivalent to wanting change at all. So I think when you meet them where they're at and deal and address with what their needs are, and for us with the Office of Community Correction portion, we actually administer an assessment to actually break it down for them where their deficits are and the things that is showing that there needs to be some change. And sometimes when you're building that great relationship and it's a strong relationship and they're understanding that we're committed to what we need to do for them to help them, usually it gets a little bit better for them, and we slowly bring them on board to recognizing that something needs to change because the lifestyle that they're living at that particular moment is not working very well for them.
You guys clearly are doing a lot within the Sheriff's Department. What can the community do right now to help support this and keep these efforts going?
I mean, I think we're engaged in kind of a multi-pronged strategy statewide that continues to need to expand. So it's about educating our community, the Sheriff's Department and community organizations and hospitals like Mercy and Providence engage frequently in community education to try to address prevention as well. Continue to increase access to intervening in spaces where people might be looking for treatment or even not looking for treatment, and really to expand access to care and treatment and support people in recovery. So addressing everything from prior criminal records to looking for employment to providing services for people to sustain recovery is something that as community members we can all contribute in our own ways through our own organizations and through recognizing that this is a disease and making sure that people don't have stigma.
Okay. How does addiction impact family and friends of a person who is addicted? We'll hear one mother's story after the break. You're watching 22 News in Focus. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Today we're talking about substance abuse and some of the programs that the Sheriff's Department has put in place to help fight this crisis. Joining me now is Patty Ahern. Patty's life has changed forever by the opioid epidemic. She lost 2 children, a son and a daughter, to heroin overdoses just 90 days apart from one another. So Patty, thank you first of all for being here. I understand this cannot be an easy story to tell. So first of all, just walk me through this. Tell me a little bit about your children and this whole process.
Well, I had a son and a daughter, Patrick. He was first born 1980. And then I had Ainsley back in 1982. And they were great kids, great kids. They were very close in age, about 19 months apart. And, you know, as they grew older, we, you know, through the high school years, we went through all of this and went away to college, and they both went away to college and graduated, and then sometime later you notice changes in your children, their demeanor. And I happened to notice that there was more requests for money. I need this, Mom, I need that, Mom. Or very temperamental, or having to leave the house first thing in the morning. Things were just not adding up like they had been. And so as things moved on in that area, sat him down, and it was her, she started. It wasn't him first, it was Ainsley. And she had met a boy, and he ended up dealing in drugs. And so sat her down. She explained to me what happened. She had started with one form of an opiate, graduated to another form of an opiate, and needed help, and got her into a detox. And then, unfortunately, with so many detoxes these days, there is no availability for the aftercare program because it's so busy, and the opiate has just taken over a whole generation at this point. So they would go to detox, or she would go to detox, come home, the same thing would happen all over again. So it was just it was a circle. It was a vicious, vicious circle.
How many times?
I can't even begin to tell you how many times. You know, she'd be sober for a while, and then she'd have a relapse. Relapse is very common in addiction. And then Patrick, he had been in the military. He had gotten hurt while he was there, and became addicted to pain medication. After that, he graduated into another opiate situation. Noticed the same thing with him. And so for several years, they were like trading off. There were times I was literally driving one to a detox and picking up one that just finished detox. And taking one to a rehab and picking up one that just completed a rehab. And this went on for several years. And then there was the Section 35, you know, that sometimes they'd ask to be sectioned because there were no beds available. This is one of the saddest parts, is there are so many people out there who need help, but we don't have enough beds available. And if you call for a bed, and they say, well, call us back in a few hours, call us back in a few hours. And yet there are detoxes that you can call that say, well, call us tomorrow, call us tomorrow. Well, that's not helping. And then some of the, I don't know if it's still the same way now, but back then, a few years ago, that you had to be high to get into a detox. So if you had a child that was home going detoxing now, being very sick, and you wanted to get them into a detox, you had to go out and buy them something that would be in their system in order for them to be allowed to go into a detox. So it was a vicious circle no matter how you look at it. And, you know, life was good for many years. You know, the three of us were a great family. And it warmed my heart because I can remember after so many years of suffering of them going through this painful addiction, standing in the kitchen and belly laughing. That was the biggest thrill, was the belly laughs. And because you knew they felt good, that they were on a good path at that point. And at the end, you know, Ainsley had gone to Mount St. Mary in Newburgh, New York, came home, decided she wanted to go to the Aveda Institute in New York City. Okay, let's do that. Came home from there, and then eventually that's when the drug addiction started. But after she had gotten sober for several years, she went back to Holyoke Community College, was on the dean's list for addiction studies. And that year is when she passed. In November, she passed away on November 4th, but that October, she had a relapse. And she had to go into a detox, and she came out and she went into a TSS, they call them, which is a transitional place that they put you prior to finding a rehab. And a situation occurred at the TSS, and she came home. She called me and said, "Can you come and get me?" It was a Tuesday night. And I said, sure. So I drove up there, and we put all her things in the trunk of the car and drove home like everything was fine. You know, she was happy, and got home, and she said to me, we sat up till about 11 o'clock talking, watching TV, and then she said she was going to go to bed, and I said, okay. And then we went up. The kids' bedrooms were on the second floor of the house, and I walked to the bottom of the stairs, and she said, you know, "Good night, Mommy, love you more." We always went through that. And she said, "I want to get up early tomorrow morning. I've got some errands to do, and I want ice cream." I said, no problem. And so the next morning, I got up early, and it was about 8:30. I'd called upstairs, and Patrick was living away at that time, working a job out of the area. Called upstairs, I didn't hear anything, and I said, oh, she's probably still sleeping. So I went back upstairs to her room, and her lights were on, but she wasn't in the room. So I'm yelling her name. I go look in Patrick's room, I look in the bathroom. I don't live in a big house, so I don't know how she could have gotten by me. But I went down in the basement, maybe she went out for coffee with a friend, and I went back upstairs when I couldn't find her. And I walked around the side of the bed, and I found her on the floor in a crouched position, and she had been gone for several hours. And that's how I lost her. So she somehow or other came home from the TSS up in Holyoke, and somewhere along the way she was able to get some heroin, and it was on the report from the medical examiner, it had fentanyl in it, and she passed away. You know, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how many hours she was there, but I know I tried everything to save her, and I just couldn't do anything. Yeah, so, and then Patrick ended up coming home. He said he actually had gone, sectioned himself. He wanted to get the Vivitrol shot because he was on Suboxone. So what happens with heroin, and so they can detox from heroin, but then they can be put on methadone or they can be put on Suboxone, which in my eyes you're just substituting another opiate for another opiate. And Patrick had decided he didn't want to be on Suboxone anymore, and the only way to detox off of Suboxone, which is the opiate, is to get medically help. So he decided to Section 35 himself, which you go down to the courthouse, and he filled out an application. He explained what was going on and so on and so forth, and I went with him, and he sectioned himself. And he went to the Brockton, out in Brockton, and he was good. He was there for like a month and a half. He sounded fair. He was happy. It was done and over with. So he had started a job. I had to call him to come home for Ainsley. And the next 3 months after that were kind of a blur, but I had him, you know, and he said, I'm not going to move away, I'm going to stay here with you. And I said, I don't, you know, he's 30-something years old, don't, you have your life. And he was doing great, absolutely great. The day he passed away, he was looking at pictures of him and his sister, because he kept sending me text messaging with this picture. Remember this, Mom? And because they were so close in age, I mean, there was all pictures of the two of them together. And I mean, I will never know, obviously. I never knew, you don't know. But I believe that, I think the pictures of him and Ainsley together triggered him to use. And with not using for as long as he did, plus having a Vivitrol shot in place, he broke through. And it had fentanyl and that heroin as well, and it killed him. And he died at the house as well.
Thank you so much for sharing these stories to help us show what is needed left in this community.
Sure.
I understand that's not easy to tell.
Well, you know, it's not easy, but I've been doing a lot of speaking about this over the last 2 years, because it's been 2 years. And if I can just help one parent, one child, you know, I mean, so many parents, we all think of this differently. How do we treat an addict? You know, some people feel we should throw them out in the street and homeless and put them in shelters and all this, and I didn't feel that way. I needed to save my children. And whether I did a good enough job right up to the end, it was their decision. They both made a very poor decision, and that took their lives. And there was nothing I could do to change that, no matter what. When an addict makes up their mind to use, nothing is going to stop them from doing that. So, but they were great kids, and she had a great sense of humor. She had no filter. She was just so much fun and loved by so many. And he, Patrick, was a little bit more on the quiet side, very handsome, and he just had that sly little grin, and he was just a little quieter than her, but as he got older, he was really coming out more so, and we just had so much fun together, the three of us.
Thank you so much for being here to share your story.
You're welcome.
Addiction recovery is a lifetime commitment, and after the break, we'll hear the stories of several people who are working to change their lives right now. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Welcome back to 22 News in Focus. Today we're talking about the opioid addiction crisis in Western Massachusetts. Joining me now are people who have been able to come back from addiction. We're joined by Daisy Diaz, Gabrielle Santiago, Jeff Coco, and we're also joined by Madeline Johnson, who is a program supervisor at the Sheriff's Department for After Incarceration Support Services. So first of all, if you can each share your stories with me, how you were able to recover and how you got yourself into that.
I start off, I'll be in recovery this summer. It'll be 3 years for me. And I've been struggling with, my drug addiction was crack and cocaine, and I've been struggling with drug addiction since I was 12 years old. It was my first time using, and throughout pretty much my whole life. I've used my whole life, and when I got to like my 30s, I couldn't see myself past 40 using drugs, and pretty much that was my turning point. There was just so much more to life. You know, you gotta have a desire and want more out of life than what the bad choices that we made due to the drugs. And you know, I've put my family, I have 2 kids. I got a 16-year-old and a 21-year-old, and I put them through a lot. And you know, and me wanting to change is also part of me wanting to be a better mother, because when you're on drugs, I was a part-time mom, and you know, and I just knew that it was more out of life. I got involved, actually going to church, and being involved in church and being a part of AISS, After Incarceration Support System. That pretty much has helped me a lot to where I am right now.
Okay. Gabrielle, tell us your story.
Well,
you know, mine's is right along something like what she said also, and I congratulate her for that too, for being able, because that takes a lot of courage for us to come forward and say that we have a problem. First of all, you have to identify that immediately, and there are certain things that happened in my life that guided me to where, and I was kind of like blessed also to have been able to survive what I have survived in order to now be able to tell a story. And at the same time that I'm telling a story, I'm also doing it amongst other people, right? The people at the Department of Correction, these people who are now guiding us and showing us the way, at the same time helping us identify those things, because they're right, you know, there are several things about us that we have to uncover about ourselves. That it's, you know, it ain't just the drugs, you know what I mean? It's other things that go along with that in order for us to have engaged in such a self-destructive behavior for such a long time, and that it took a long time to build who I was, but so I have to know that it's also going to take a long time to undo all those learned behaviors. You know what I mean? And I do that today. I do it riding alongside other people who are suffer from this, communication, and seeking those answers of not only just about myself, and I do that collectively with other people, with staff members that I call and I see all the time, with therapists that are there at ISS to help you. That place it is a blessing, because those people are at the forefront of what the true addiction is, and they provide a lot of help, and I've been blessed to have found my way there. You know, I went to the incarceration, I went through the programs. And along the line, I started listening. You know, I started saying to myself, I'm getting older, and for some reason, God, you have kept me alive up to now. You know, we even start to believe that there is a higher power that has guided us and has kept us from harm. Because we truly, all the people up here and those working with us, we're all miracles of what this thing is doing to a lot of people. Today, I'm blessed to say that not only I am never going to recover from this, but I am going to fight it all the way. And those thoughts of using are always going to exist in me, but you know what? So am I. You know, so am I going to exist in there. And I have picked up a few skills that when those thoughts of wanting to use or wanting to react in a certain way, because ISS does a good job. I'm part of a group called Men Stepping Up for Change. And what that means is that we sit around and, you know, people who are still incarcerated, as well as people like myself who have made it into society, who are now trying to be productive members of society. We get together and we talk about these things, right? We talk about the obstacles that are waiting for us, because, you know, the doctor's right. Some of the guys that were up here, they're right. You know, it's going to take a long time effort for order for you to learn how to journey well through life. You know what I mean? And that's what I have learned to accept and to learn these new behaviors about myself, and to continue to uncover things about myself that are helpful, and old behaviors that I need to let go of, you know, and learning the skills how to do so and being okay with that.
All right, we will continue this conversation when we come back. You're watching 22 News in Focus. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Today we're talking with people who at one point in their life suffered with addiction. So Jeff, please tell me your story now.
So my story started off with, I was employed as a police officer in my hometown, and during the course of my duties I had received a couple injuries, and as a result I was issued some pain medication. And I didn't realize that I had a predisposition to liking this type of medication. I know that when I was younger, I was issued pain medication. It was issued by my parents through the doctors, of course. And I just remember the feeling that I had when I took this medication. As I went on and started working at my job, now I'm taking the medication on my own through the prescriber, the doctor, and eventually I ended up starting to abuse the medicine. And it was hard for me to come up and say that I had a problem. You know, with the stigma at the time that was going on with addiction, and especially being a police officer, I found it to be hard to admit, not only to myself, but to other people, that I had a problem. And I thought that I could handle this issue on my own. And I couldn't. The more I tried, you know, the deeper I felt. I tried doing outpatient programs. I tried hiding it from my family, and it didn't work. So I did the Suboxone program, and while doing that, I was still using my pain medicine and the Suboxone. I wasn't going to therapy. I wasn't talking to people about my problems, and now at this point, I'm starting to steal money to maintain my addiction, and it wasn't to feel good. It was just to get through the day. I wasn't looking to get high. I was just looking not to get sick, and that was the goal for me when I woke up in the morning, was who am I going to get a hold of to make it so I can go on and do my normal course of duties throughout the day. So this went on for a few years. You know, I hid it from everybody. I manipulated people that were around me. I lied, I stole, I caused diversions in my family to take the truth away from what was actually going on to me. Eventually, with the assistance of my family, after they caught on, I was able to get myself into a detox and then a long-term treatment program. But my criminal cases were coming up. And as a result, you know, I lost my job as a police officer. I was employed for about 18 years. And then I went through the court proceedings, and I had to go to jail for the crimes that I committed while working. But I mean, that was a blessing, you know, because it got me to take a real look at myself. It got me sober. I got into some treatment programs. Eventually I got transferred down to the Mill Street facility here in Springfield. And the staff there was wonderful. You know, they were able to help me out. You know, I came in with a good foundation, but the staff there was able to help me with some of the problems that I had. And I continued that once I got out. Right now, just a couple of days ago, I celebrated 2 years clean, and I've gone back to school. I'm getting into drug and alcohol counseling, and I'm hoping that with where I came from, going to jail, and now getting onto the other side with counseling, that I'm able to help some people along and understand, you know, where they're coming from and the whole addiction.
Congratulations on that, and congratulations to all of you.
Thank you.
Madeline, there's something he said that going to jail was a blessing. Is this something you hear often from people who are struggling with addiction, that jail seems to be their only path to recovery?
Yes, we've heard it a lot. Sometimes it takes, like, it might not be the first time or the second time that after being out of jail that it clicks in, but eventually it does. And sometimes it's the lessons or the just sitting back and taking time to kind of reflect on what's been going on and what's the change that needs to happen, and then it does resonate. It does, like, okay, I need to change. Being in jail, and I kind of learned the lessons that I need to learn, taking advantage of the services, listening to the officers kind of sometimes be the one who are giving you that motivation to change. And yes, we do hear a lot. I mean, you're listening to 3 amazing stories here, 3 different individuals, 3 different situations, and what works for one doesn't work for another. But they're only 3 of many different success stories that we have at our office. And you know, when we do get the new client that comes in and they can see the person that they remember in the streets, maybe engaging in drugs or maybe the activity, the negative activity, and to see them in a different style of lighting, it's amazing. And they're like, I want to be like the person. What does it take to get to where they are now? And we have them to be the ones to actually be the ones to teach them.
What does the process look like now? Now that you are in recovery, how often do you have to, or do you like to meet with people to make sure you're on the right path?
Me personally, like I was saying, there was the AISS has a mentorship program, and I when I decided to get clean and I said I had enough, I wanted to do more. I wanted to, like, help. I don't know, I just wanted to give, and I got involved with the mentorship program, and I've been going into the jails. being a mentor for the past two and a half years, and I enjoy doing it. And I go, the purpose is that, if you want change and if you want something out of life, it is possible. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to come as, as smooth. There's going to be struggles, just as there's struggles when you was doing whatever it is that you were doing. But you got to, you got to persevere and you got to push through. And if you really want it and you desire to want these things, it's at your reach, And I mean, like and by being at the doing the mentorship at the women's jail, I wasn't looking for a job at the time, and I got sought out, and I am a recovery specialist at a halfway house due to doing what volunteering at the women's jail. Now I got a job and I'm doing what I enjoy doing the most, and that's helping others and let them know that there is hope. You got to have faith in yourself, and there is so much more to life than what we choose to do when we are on drugs.
What would you say to someone who might be watching now and struggling themselves, if there was one thing you could say?
Well, if they are struggling, one of the things that I would personally say is that there is hope, right? And that they have to hold on to whatever little bit of you that is still alive within you and seek those people. I just want to touch on something you said too. The fact is, what makes a person to want to be in jail? Because we also, we have to touch on that. On the time of arrest, a lot of people who are suffering from addiction, if you look at addiction these days, the way I understand it is the fact that we have lost complete control over who we are. And that's what sometimes occurs in people who suffer from this condition, that they lose control or even their communication skills. And some of them, what makes a person lay down at night and say, I wish I wouldn't wake up tomorrow. That's how serious addiction can get in certain people when they lose control or who they are anymore. They don't recognize themselves when they wake up in the morning. It becomes, one of the things that has always interested me is the psychological effect. When this thing is, when you hit the streets, you hit them hard. Right? We have the saying, and those learned behaviors that you pick up, and that practice of self-destructive behavior that goes on for days, for years, whatever the condition is, if the money's still there, you're going to continue to do so. But that creates a person, right? That takes time to undo. Some of them don't make it back alive from that. And that's why I agree with continue program, continue the work that the ISS do and the work that we are now part of, right? Is that continue to educate. Some of the guys that I sit in this room with are clean, but still thinking about using. You know what I mean? That's something, the things that is mind-boggling about the human mind, right? What an imprint does drugs leave on you, even after leaving them, even after you're not longer engaging in that type of behavior. That's the stuff that we have to concentrate. That's where the good stuff is at when you're talking to somebody who's addicted. You have to tell them that you have to make them understand that is something that you have practiced and you have put in there for such amount of time that it's going to take a while for you to undo. But we're going to help you with that.
All right,
we're going to guide you
all so much for sharing your stories today. I understand they are not easy ones to tell, and we will have the last word for you after the break. That's our program for today. We want to thank our guests for sharing their difficult stories, and thank you at home for watching. If you missed any of it, you can watch it in full on our website, wwlp.com. From all of us here at 22 News, have a wonderful Sunday.